This is a fair and balanced rule that protects our nation's retirees and savers. It is a rule, in fact, that makes sure that amidst a retirement crisis in this country where people are having a harder and harder time making sure that after working a lifetime they have the money they need to retire, it is bringing common sense back to that process. I firmly believe that the conflict of interest rule should not be a partisan issue. That's because this rule really comes down to those fundamental ideas that really know no party bounds. Again, the ideas for me are about honor and common sense. By honor, I mean the idea that we are a country that believes every American deserves a fair opportunity to succeed. Fairness is at the core of our nation's ideals. This idea that we are all bound to do what we can to identify and change systems that stack the deck against hard-working families that play by the rules. This body in its history has done so much to level the playing field and make sure that we have a free market and a fair market. It's because we as a nation value dignity and stand up against those who seek to exploit or take advantage of others. In fact, we understand that we have an obligation to our country, men and women. We have an obligation to each other to ensure that the level playing field is there and no one can take advantage or exploit another. We participate in and abide by and are meant to benefit from this social contract and understand that a social contract and a vibrant economy are not mutually exclusive. Actually, they're mutually supportive. These principles make America exceptional. They empower and embolden our free market economy. They generate strength and security for more families. They ensure abundance in the ideals of life, liberty, and our ability to pursue happiness. And so I believe we're honor-bound to uphold these principles, to ensure fairness and opportunity for all, to understand that that is a key ingredient in broad-based economic growth and strength. And so when I talk about common sense, I mean that people have a reasonable expectation in a free market of being treated fairly and justly, especially in those areas that are most critical to our lives. It's rational, therefore, for us to insist that when we're treated by a doctor, it's just common sense that that doctor is going to place the interest of our health over their own financial interests. It's understandable that when we go to see a doctor, that what is paramount is what's in our best interest. It's also understandable that we have that standard when it comes to the law, that when we seek legal counsel, we are right to expect our lawyers to act in our best interest. That is the standard for doctors and for lawyers, for our health and well-being, and for those legal decisions in our lives that will affect our lives profoundly. It means that when we seek advice on an issue as serious as our health, our livelihoods, and our finances, we expect to be treated with the highest standards of care. And those professionals, those lawyers or doctors, it doesn't in any way inhibit their ability to make a livelihood, indeed, in many cases, to flourish. And while the vast majority in the financial industry are strong advisors who put the interest of their clients first, the challenge we have right now is, unlike doctors and lawyers, those financial advisors are not required to put the interest of their clients at that high level of a fiduciary standard. And as a result of not having that high standard of care of doctors and lawyers, there are some within that industry that actually take advantage of families trying to plan for their retirement. A large money market manager recently said, as active equity managers, these are sophisticated people, by the way, this money manager said, as active equity managers, we've all been on the hook lately to justify our value proposition. And we should be, since the facts clearly show that as an industry, we have not consistently provided the performance that our investors deserve. Here are folks that have incredible financial knowledge, sophistication, acumen, talking to everyday Americans, trying to put forth this idea that they're going to help them retire with security, but they have no obligation to do what's in their best interest, to do what's in that highest standard of care. That is problematic. And the industry leaders understand that. They understand that we can't allow space for those who might seek to exploit for their own financial interest families that are struggling to retire. And it's this idea that is really at the root of the conflict of interest rule. The idea that hardworking Americans saving for retirement deserve to be treated with fairness, with honor, with that mutual obligation that Americans should have towards each other. That if they seek advice from a financial advisor, they deserve to get advice that prioritizes their needs above all others. This is about fairness. This is about common sense. Now, I was proud to stand with the Secretary of Labor, Secretary Perez, and my colleagues, Senator Warren and Senator Murray, when this final rule was announced, and I'm proud that prior to that, the rule went through a very lengthy and diligent process that allowed for robust feedback from all types of stakeholders. Throughout the rulemaking process, the Department of Labor demonstrated patience, inclusiveness of all perspectives, and most of all, an unyielding commitment to protecting our nation's workers and retirees, protecting the bedrock of our country, the very idea of the middle class, that you work hard, you play by the rules, and you can retire with security and dignity. The result of all the Department of Labor's works and their commitment to this ideal is a fair and balanced rule based on the ideas of that common sense and honor. And the fact is, for so many Americans, it could not come at a more important time. In fact, it could not come at a more urgent time. We have a retirement crisis in our country. So many people are working harder and harder, but are finding themselves with more month at the end of their money than money at the end of their month. Many people are finding it harder and harder to save for retirement. In fact, right now, only 1 in 3 Americans aren't saving for retirement. The Federal Reserve found that a whopping 47% of Americans don't have the savings to even cover a $400 emergency expense. And since the financial crisis, retirement readiness for the average American has actually decreased. Families are seeing greater challenges now securing their own future. They're seeing greater difficulties securing that American dream of being able to work hard, play by the rules, retire with dignity and security. I know this personally, and my office does, because we hear from constituents all the time about their real stories, not just in the difficulties of planning for retirement, but by dealing with a financial industry that often takes advantage of their clients. Last year, I heard from one of my constituents in Lakewood who wrote to tell me about his mother. After losing her husband, she went to seek advice from a financial advisor to help her sort out her finances and plan for her retirement. She put her trust, her livelihood in the hands of this advisor. But the conflicted advice she received ended up costing her tens of thousands of dollars. Savings for retirement is stressful. At kitchen tables in every town, every city across the country, families are struggling to figure out how best to save for retirement. And here was a conflicted advisor giving advice that more benefited them than the person, costing my resident in Lakewood tens of thousands of dollars because they trusted and relied that the advice the financial retirement advisor was giving them was in their best interest. This is wrong, and it's unfair. And especially for those Americans who don't have much to begin with, the way they manage their retirement savings means so much. Huge gulfs continue to persist in retirement savings between men and women, the poor and the wealthy, minority families and their white peers. This is a problem for all of America, from all different backgrounds. It's a crisis in our country. And so for so many Americans, in regards to this rule, there is so much at stake. And good advice from a retirement advisor can make a world of a difference. In fact, it can make the difference between security and financial crisis. It can make the difference between retiring with ease versus retiring with stress and dependency. That's why the advice of a trusted retirement professional is so important. And there are so many good actors in this space who know that increased transparency, increased accountability, and the ideas of profitability don't need to be mutually exclusive. In fact, there are people making extraordinary livings in this space doing the right thing by their clients. Honest, hardworking brokers who know that updating the standards expected of retirement advisors is common sense, it is fair, and it actually helps America as a whole become stronger. That's why industry leaders are already making changes to prepare for this rule's implementation, and why a CEO of a major money management firm recently implored his industry colleagues, saying, let's not lose sight of why clients engage us in the first place. To help them save money they need to buy a house, send their kids to college, retire comfortably, and meet other long-term financial goals they have. This CEO is 100% right. And I'm happy that many companies are beginning to ensure their retirement plans make the most of their employees' savings. According to a recent Wall Street Journal report, the administrative cost of retirement plans fell to their lowest level in a decade in 2015, and with this rule will continue to fall. The needle is moving in the right direction. To attempt to block this rule now, though, would be a step backwards. And it would send a message to hardworking Americans and retirees that they simply don't matter enough to this body. That this body cares more about special interests than hardworking families. It cares more about financial advisors on Wall Street and their ability to exploit middle-class Americans than it does those middle-class Americans who believe in the American dream that is being put at risk. To not support this rule would be to roll back what we all know is that we can create a win-win on a fair economy that doesn't exploit people who are vulnerable, but uplifts them, where both financial advisor and middle-class retiree can have success. Americans, I know men and women in our country, and many who serve here, that we know ourselves the challenges of planning for retirement. Look, on the day this rule was announced earlier this year, I understood that some people would try to fight this. And I turned to the folks listening and saying, look, this fight is not over. We're going to have to continue. Let us as a nation fight for what's right, not for the special interest of the wealthy few, not to allow people to feast upon the retirement savings and the hard work of others, but let's fight to affirm the middle-class dream in America. Let's fight to make sure that we are doing right by folks by creating a level playing field. This is a fight for people like the constituent of mine who not only lost her husband, but too much of her savings and now is trying to pick up the pieces. This fight is not over for hardworking families across this country who are diligently saving for retirement and for whom these hidden fees unfortunately represent a threat to undermine decades of their hard work. These hidden fees are insidious. These hidden fees exploit people to enrich others. These hidden fees are un-American. And so we must continue to make sure that those hardworking advisors who provide exemplary levels of service that prioritize their clients' interest are the ones who are being elevated in this fair system and not being maligned by those few bad actors who feast upon other people. This fight has to be about what it means to be an American. This is what this body did when it passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act 40 years ago. We believed in this idea that America is a place where you work hard, where you play by the rules, you can retire with dignity. And don't have to worry that your doctor or your lawyer or your financial advisor will exploit you and thrust you into insecurity or worse. This is what we must do in this body. In the spirit of past actions, we must put the interest of the middle-class constituents first, plain and simple. This rule is fair. This rule is balanced. This rule helps our free market economy. This rule creates great standards that should be applied when it comes to something as precious and fundamental as our retirement savings. It creates honor in this business. It creates honor for America. The needle has moved forward. We cannot allow the needle to roll back. Mr. President, I yield the floor.